Wow. Okay. So it's Dr. Speizer, right?
Speizer.
Speizer?
It's close enough.
Speizer. Okay. And he helped me a great deal with understanding my water system, like what's in my water and a proper way to filter out some of the stuff. But he shared with us a lot of stories. He had worked at Hippocrates with the owner Brian Clement, who is on his website and fixed their system. He also worked with the Macrobiotics Center of New York City. He knows Suzuko Yamamoto, and so that goes way back. And he's just very extremely knowledgeable about water, what goes into our water and what contaminants are there and what we should look for. So I thought it'd be really wonderful to have him today. And also, I sent you a link where you can put your address in and get a readout, or Roy will go over that with you, um, how to understand what's currently in your water, your tap water. Oh, here's Holly. Holly's coming back in. So let me just see if she wants to say hello. Holly?
Yes, sorry, I was having some technical difficulties there.
That's all right. You want to just introduce yourself? Everybody else went through.
Sure. I'm Holly Norris. I'm new to microbiotics. I have a daughter that has chemical allergies that she developed after having COVID, so I would like to learn how to help her. And then I have my husband has prediabetes, not a big guy, and he's a nephrologist, so go figure that. But anyway, I just have kind of come to realize that maybe instead of just taking things out that maybe aren't the best, learning how to actually heal conditions. So that's just kind of new to me, and I'm just excited to learn about that. So
Nice to
nice
have
to
you, Holly.
thank you.
Christy, you want to introduce yourself? Christy just logged on.
Hi, thank you. My name's Christy, and I've been in the wellness field for well over 25 years, do energy work, and
And Christy had a consultation in macrobiotics with me. So she's been in our macro meetup group each week, our month. Okay. All right. So I'm gonna leave it up to you, Roy, to take it away.
Great. Thank you so much, Sheri, and welcome everyone. I see I have a couple of fellow Floridians here. I'm located in Stuart, Florida. So I'm in between Orlando and Boynton Beach, you said, I believe. So it's lovely. Florida's lovely. It's hot and humid. That's typical at this time of year. I'm a transplanted New Yorker, so you'll have to forgive my dialect. It's been an odyssey. It's been a whole lifetime trip in the health field. And starting out very young, I was in a totally different direction because my parents owned a delicatessen. I used to eat salami, bologna, all the bad foods you could possibly think of. I think I was weaned on carnation evaporated milk. So you can understand, I go back a way, maybe I don't look as old as I am, but I go back, I was born in 1946. So I've had a complete transition. I think when I was young, every tooth in my mouth had cavities because I was eating sugar, Hostess Twinkies, you name it. So by the time I got into college, I started having some health issues, and someone introduced me to a healthy way of life, and I started on that trip, on the health trip. But the most important thing is you really could talk about how to stay healthy in a toxic world. That would be an overview of what I would like to talk about, but of course that's too encompassing, it's too broad. Uh, Water, though, is a critical part of your health. Obviously, you can't live without it for more than a few days. So air is the number one element that's life sustaining, then water, then food. So water has been ignored by the health professionals, and I've been in the holistic field roughly 50 years now. And the doctors I used to deal with in New York, there was a group called FAME. Atkins was in. I could throw out a lot of different names, and I met a lot of wonderful people. Some of them I'm still friends with. Merrily, I met about 25 years ago because I was working with Dr. Ray, who had a clinic, American Environmental Health in Plano, Texas. He was a world-renowned doctor that dealt with multiple chemical sensitivity, MCS. And a lot of his patients are still located in Texas because literally they built homes around his clinic, and they had to literally live in bubbles that were so toxic. They were totally damaged, chemically damaged. So I've had the experiences with a lot of different types of conditions, people that I've encountered. But the main thing is this, is that water is a critical part of your health. You cannot be healthy or stay healthy if you're drinking toxic water. When I say toxic water, all the water in the United States, other than maybe a deep well in Arkansas, like they use bottled water, but most of the water sources in the United States are very toxic. I deal with this every single day, and the clients that are referred to me by clinics, doctors, patient referrals, customer referrals. I keep saying patients. I was a retired chiropractor. Uh, the problem is they're trying to regain their health, and you can't regain your health, when you're detoxifying by reloading your body with more toxic substances. So most of you are already on a healthy path. Macrobiotics is a great food program. I did it for years. So I think the thrust of what I want to talk about is a part of your health that you may have ignored, you may have taken for granted, and that's clean water. Because you're using water, you consume it, you're rinsing your vegetables, you're cooking with it, you're bathing in it, and you're exposing yourself to a whole range of toxic substances, chemicals, heavy metals, radioactivity, pesticides, these new PFAS chemicals, and microplastics. So there's a whole laundry list of substances that are toxic to your health and your body that you consume every single day. And you're not aware of it because you assume the water is safe or it meets federal standards. And that's a real myth. Unfortunately, you may be aware, of course, you don't trust the government. I don't think anyone does these days, but when it comes, maybe it'll change with the RFK, but for the most part, you're drinking water that's toxic that meets federal standards. So the EPA established the Clean Water Act. They put in a list of substances that they considered toxic at the time, and they set goals or concentration levels that they said were allowable, not safe, not healthy. You can read about all that if you go to the Environmental Working Group. They've done all the studies. So their studies have shown that the levels that are allowed could be hundreds to 1,000 times toxic to your health than is stated by the EPA that allow them. So I'll give you a perfect example. Arsenic. Arsenic is not that common in water systems, but it's seen around. I see it various places. The government still allows 10 parts per billion of arsenic in your water. Their goal is 0. 50 years ago, they allowed 50 parts per billion of arsenic. It was allowed. So you could be drinking water with 49 parts per billion of arsenic. It was allowed. Well, after doing more science studies about it, they found that the levels were way too high. They lowered it to 10 as an arbitrary level because municipal treatment companies can't afford to fix it. They can't take it out. They can't afford the equipment that's needed to maintain a low level of arsenic or 0. So that's one of the things that you may be consuming in your water. We find out by looking at your water report. But typically, all water systems in the United States treat the water with disinfection chemicals. Chlorine is the primary one, and now they're using chloramine, which is chlorine plus ammonia. The reason they do that, and this goes back well over 100 years, because you had pathogenic bacteria in the water systems in the United States. You actually had cholera in the water back in the 1800s. So waterborne disease, it's very common around the world. Thousands of people die every day from waterborne disease. But in the United States, in order to make the water potable, that means free of bacteria or viruses or microbes, they have to disinfect the water with chemicals. And they monitor this on a regular basis. So any municipal treatment company has to test the water a couple times a week for bacteria, mostly E. coli or coliforms. And if they start rising up, like down here in Florida, we're chlorinated the heck out of the water because you're in a warm environment. In the summer, the pipes get heated up, bacteria grow more, and then you may notice in your water, when you take a shower, it smells like Clorox or ammonia because they're dosing up the levels. And sometimes they send out notices that we're going to spike the water because it needs to be cleaned out. There's too many bacteria. And just be aware that if you're on dialysis, We have a fish tank, filtered water extra, but don't drink it, but it's safe. That's the typical notices they send out. But on a daily basis, you're exposed to chlorine, chloramine, and the chemical byproducts, which are called disinfection byproducts. There's two classes. There's trihalomethanes and haloacetic acids. So I don't want to get too technical, but when chlorine and chloramine are dosed into the pipes, the main pipes in the system, they come in contact with organic matter and they form chemical reactions to form other chemicals. There's two classes, trihalomethanes and haloacetic acids. They monitor this. There's a level they allow, 80 parts per billion of trihalomethanes, 60 parts per billion of haloacetic acids. But when they're combined, it could exceed both of those levels. You're drinking it, or when you take a shower, you're absorbing it through your skin, you breathe it in as a gas. And the trihalomethanes, most of them are considered carcinogenic. They've done studies on this. So over a period of decades, you're exposed to these chemicals. This is one group of chemicals that increases your risk for certain types of cancer, like bowel and bladder cancer. And this is a daily occurrence. You're drinking it, rinsing your vegetables, cooking with it, and it contains dozens, if not hundreds, of these disinfection chemicals. So that's just one category of contaminants that are typically found in all water, unless you got a well. And in wells, that's a separate discussion, but they add a lot of chemicals to the water to clarify the water. So the water's a little cloudy. They add aluminum sulfate. Aluminum, of course, you know, is not good for your brain. It's a heavy metal. They add it to the water to make the water clear. It's a flocculating agent or clarifying. So that's typically done in water. They'll add other things to the water. They may add iron removing chemicals, chelating agents, and fluoride. Now, fluoride is a really big problem. I don't know how aware you are of fluorosilicic acid or hydrofluorosilicic acid. It's a toxic chemical. We're not talking about natural fluoride. 70% of the water systems are adding fluorosilicic acid at pretty high levels. Several years ago, Health and Human Services lowered that level because the EPA allowed way too much. They lowered it to 0.8 parts per million. There's been 26 studies from the National Institute of Health sponsored that show that fluoride, chemical fluoride, is a neurotoxin, affects your thyroid, and it's a carcinogenic chemical. And they found that women who are pregnant drinking fluoridated water within the maximum concentration level or over it generally have babies with lower IQs. This has been well established. Not only that, it doesn't really protect your bones because fluoride displaces calcium. So as you get older, you're going to start getting an effect of bone loss, which naturally occurs, and fluoride aggravates the loss of calcium. So it actually increases osteoporosis. Fortunately, recently in Florida, the Surgeon General just told everybody to stop dosing it up in the water. He told them to ban it. So it's banned in Florida. Utah, the governor just signed a law to ban it. I think with Kennedy, he's going to ban it nationally, I hope, because they're mass medicating the water. It's toxic, it has no benefit. The studies on dental protection, I think, are minimal, but you got to look at the risk ratio, risk benefit. Much higher risk, much lower benefit when they fluoridate the water. It's really a problem with nutrition with children, dental hygiene. That's really the issue with eating a lot of crap food, sugar, carbohydrates, and so forth. So that's just one of the major contaminants that we find in the water. And I can go down to the laundry list. Typically, we find lead still in water. We find strontium in water and radioactivity. Uranium is fairly common. It's naturally occurring. And when you drink water with uranium, there's radioactive particles. There's alpha particles, beta particles, and radium. So if you have a significant amount of radioactivity in your water, it's also coming up through your foundation of your house. So you may be living in a radon area. That's another issue. So when I see radium or radioactivity in water, I always advise clients, check your house for radon. Usually they have, and they ventilate the house, because if you have radon coming up through your foundation, you're going to get lung cancer eventually. But let's stick to water. So when you read a water report, and I have a few on my screen, you can Google it. So wherever you live, let's say South Orlando, for example, All you have to Google is Orlando, Florida water quality report. I do this every day, multiple times a day. You pull out a report. Also, I look at the environmental working group because they review the water reports going back 5 years. And sometimes they find things that are not in the current report because some are unregulated contaminants and they don't report it every year. So when I look at a water report, I'm looking for the chemicals, VOCs, volatile organic chemicals. Those are industrial chemicals, pesticides, heavy metals, arsenic, lead, copper, nickel, mercury in some cases. I've seen a few other things. And nitrate is very common. So we see all these types of contaminants in the water. And I have to advise the client, what do you do to clean your water up? So this is not a simple process. And now with these newer emerging contaminants, particularly PFAS chemicals, these are forever chemicals. They are the most toxic chemicals known to date. Chlorine is toxic at parts per million. Trihalomethanes are toxic at parts per billion. PFAS chemicals are toxic at parts per trillion. And I'm a little upset right now because the EPA just backed off from making the standards stricter. Several years ago, they came out with the first standard, which was maximum concentration level of 70 parts per trillion. Then with more studies, scientific studies, they found that it was really toxic at much lower levels. So the current standard is 10 parts per trillion. They wanted to lower it to 4 parts per trillion, but the municipal treatment companies pushed back on it and they said, we can't afford to put upgrades to our treatment plants. It'll cost a fortune for our ratepayers. So they're holding off. But to me, 0 is the only thing that's safe, whether it's arsenic, radioactivity, anything that's toxic should be at non-detect levels in your drinking water, your bathing water, anything that you consume, touches your food, you cook with, you don't want any contaminants. You want to get them down to non-detect. And that's not easy. And there's a lot of misinformation out on the web. I get this almost every week. Somebody calls me up and says, gee, I read about this or that machine. There's a whole bunch of them. I don't want to get into the whole thing right now, but most of the equipment that is sold on the internet is inadequate and overpriced. It's a real consumer issue, and I have a big issue with that. So I have to educate clients, and I have a lot of information on my website. I've written a lot of articles. I've updated it, but you need a lot more sophisticated filtration technology today when you have all these different types of contaminants, because there's not one size fits all. There's no equipment out there, filtration equipment. There's no pour through pitchers, faucet filters, small units that just have carbon in it. And a lot of these house systems are small and they're inadequate. So before I get into solutions, you have to understand something about water. You could be filtering your water right now. You may have a filter, and you're still getting a lot of contaminants through your filter. For example, one of the things that if anyone's immune compromised, particularly, if you look at the water report, it says right on there that when you're immune deficient or immune compromised, you're on cancer medication, you don't want to be drinking water that has parasites in it. Cryptosporidium is a parasite. Giardia is a parasite, very common in surface water sources. So I have to, mention that because a lot of filters really don't remove parasites. Bottled water could have parasites. That's another discussion about bottled water because a lot of people are looking for solutions. They understand the water doesn't taste good. They want to find ways of cleaning up their water or alternatives. And a lot of people go to bottled water. Bottled water is not the solution. There's a few out there, like Mountain Valley. It's one of the better ones, but it's expensive and it's not a total solution. So you can't bathe in bottled water. You can't rinse all your vegetables in bottled water. So you're still going to wind up using toxic water for a lot of your uses in your home. So you don't want to go necessarily to bottled water. Some of it's okay, but the big problem I have is they're in plastic bottles. And plastics, microplastics in particular, if you read about it recently, a lot of new articles, these microplastics are down into the sub-micron range, very small particles. Also, plastics like bisphenol A, other plastics that are in leach out of plastic bottles or containers, there's xenoestrogens. I don't know if you know what a xenoestrogen is, but these are chemical substances that affect your hormones. There's many of them out there. Pesticides can be xenoestrogens, plastics, and other chemicals. And I'm writing an article right now because I don't know if you know Anne Louise Gittleman. She's written dozens of books. She's upgrading her book now on how to stay healthy in a toxic world. So she asked me to write a few paragraphs on the newer contaminants, and microplastics and PFAS chemicals come to the forefront because they're causing more problems now than they ever did before, because there's more of them in the environment. And these are from products like Teflon, firefighting foam that leach out PFAS chemicals. There's a couple advertisements on TV now. You can get non-Teflon, non-stick pans. There's one company, Caraway. I bought it because you don't want to be using any Teflon in your house. But all these chemicals have leached into our water supplies, and they're coming back up in our drinking water. So I see laundry lists of these in some areas that have underground aquifers where there's been dumping, waste dumps, industrial dumping, and everything comes back up in the drinking water. For example, I used to live on Long Island. They have over 200 toxic waste sites. There's one area in there, beautiful area, Jericho. It's in the middle of Long Island, and they have some of the worst water in the country. Houston's another area, has some pretty bad water. And I look at water reports every day, and I see more and more of these toxic substances coming into the forefront. And when you look at the water report, it's scary. Really, it's amazing because you have 30, 40, 50, 60, 100 contaminants that the government allows. It's below the MCL, or in some cases above the MCL, but they're not doing anything to enforce the cleaning up because they don't have the money. So this is a real huge problem, and it affects our health. It's increasingly causing all kinds of health problems, contributing to these health problems. There's cancer clusters that I deal with clients up in, for example, Massachusetts have some very high PFAS chemicals. There's an Air Force base that I used to be stationed on, and they just dump firefighting foam and all these chemicals. You don't want to be living near any military bases because they have the most toxic substances that have spread out into the water supplies. And this is where you see a lot of cancer clusters, or I call them disease clusters. So it's a big, water contamination is a big factor, environmental factor, more so today than ever before, involved in your health issues, and you really need clean water to be healthy or to stay healthy and recover your health, because you want to detoxify whatever you have in your body that's accumulated over the years, and you can't do that when you're drinking more toxic substances. So that's what I lecture on. I've been affiliated with Hippocrates, great place. They found me, the owner, years ago because we used to do health shows, and he asked me to come in and lecture on it. And they're really a great place because it's all vegan. They have a big greenhouse that I'm filtering the water for. The building is filtered. The water in West Palm Beach is pretty bad, so I had to put a lot of big filters in there, reverse osmosis units. And they're very health conscious. So they use a lot of juicing, organic vegetables. They have a lot of different modalities. And I've seen some really good results with people that come in with a lot of different health disorders. I mean, it's anecdotal, but I've spoken with people that had these conditions. They come down there and they spend weeks to months and they get well in a lot of cases. So I think a healthy lifestyle, including clean water, is essential to be well and stay well. So that's the basics. Now, let's get to the solutions. I put my website up here. Does everyone see it? I think it's.
Yeah.
So on my website, which is cwrenviro.com, cwrenviro.com. I have a blog here with a lot of articles. I'll just flip through it. I just talked about air pollution. I've had a lot of pollution lately down here in Florida. Particle counts are high. I have an article here on PFAS chemicals. So if you want to look through the articles, a lot of them I picked up from other writers. On my homepage, these are some of the equipment solutions. And further down here, this is Hippocrates. That's Brian Clemens. He's the director. I've been working with him for quite a few years. He only recommends me for any kind of water filtration. These are some of the sophisticated systems I've had to put in very complex water problems. These are all residential. The one over here, this one is one of Hippocrates. But we've had to do work all over the United States. This system over here is in Texas, 20,000 square foot ranch, working ranch, horrible water. This one here is up in New Hampshire, a client to have high arsenic, ridiculous amounts. It was 110 parts per billion. So had to put 2 tanks in there just for arsenic, and then had PFAS. So these are the kind of systems we don't normally have to put in. Usually we put in 1 tank and a sink unit, but we have to look at the water report first to determine what contaminants we're dealing with. So we have special filter materials, and I've designed filters. Give an example, some of the filter systems we have. These are like some of the units we use under counter, countertop, and I have a whole piece of information. I developed this product called Metal Gone, ceramic with Metal Gone or Metal Gone. So Metal Gone technology is a combination of 5 different filter materials. And on the left there, you can see the contaminants we've tested to remove. We just upgraded it for PFAS chemicals. So now we can remove 95% of the PFAS chemicals up to a certain level. In addition to fluoride, we have the only filter on the market that can remove all forms of fluoride. No one else has that. They've been using activated alumina. Primac is okay for natural fluoride. It's not as good for chemical. So, that's just one of the types of filter materials that we use. And we combine those filters with other filters, possibly uranium removing material, arsenic removing material, chemical removing material. So these filters are in combination usually with a point of entry filtration system. So this is point of use at the sink. We have other types of units, for example, reverse osmosis. In a reverse osmosis, this is the membrane, if you're familiar with it. So there's 3 pre-filters, and we use our own filters in the pre-filters because the standard filters that come with RO units are not adequate. They're usually a sediment filter, carbon block. The membrane does a lot, though. It does remove some radioactivity. I'll click this on. You can see some of the contaminants that are removed by the membrane. It does a lot, but you still need pre-filters to get rid of chemicals, reduce other contaminants before the water gets to the membrane. And this is just a sink unit. So if you live in an apartment or you live in a condo, sometimes you can't do a point of entry, which is a house unit. So you want to maximize your filtration equipment solution at the sink, depending on how much room you have. If you're renting, it's a little more difficult. You use a countertop unit. Shower filters. Shower filters are okay mostly for chlorine, but they do not remove the trihalomethane. So that's limited. So I always start with the maximum filtration equipment solution that you can fit in your situation, and then you work from there. If I have a house I'm dealing with, then we can deal with a whole house system. Then you work up to a house system where you have a filtration tank, and I'll show you that. If you go water filtration, total home water filtration, this is a point of entry filtration tank. This is a large tank. It's like a big oxygen tank. And what we do differently is I blend the filter materials in a tank. It's not 1 carbon, it's not 2 carbons, it's usually 3 different carbons. So I can use catalytic carbon, which is good for chloramine or monochloramine. I use CS, coconut shell, it's good for chlorine. Then we use bituminous carbon. So when you blend them all together, you can take care of the PFAS chemicals better, the trihalomethane is better. Plus, I'm going to add 3 or 4 different other filter materials. So I may add uranium, arsenic. I'm sorry?
Irene, you want to mute? I just muted her. Go ahead. Sorry.
So depending on what's in the water, I'm going to start adding other filter materials for heavy metals, radioactivity, if it's there, uranium, arsenic, if it's there. So you're going to get 98% or better the chemicals out for the whole house. That covers every fixture in your house. Showers, baths, sinks, toilet, dishwasher, refrigerator. Every fixture in your house is filtered for chemicals. Then we start the reduction of the heavy metals and other contaminants. Then you have to finish up the filtration process at the sink. So we can use a reverse osmosis. When I see certain contaminants, there are red flags, arsenic, uranium, perchlorate, which affects the thyroid. That's from fertilizer. That's one of the contaminants that we see often. When I see these red button contaminants, the hot ones, I have to use a reverse osmosis. If we can't use RO, it doesn't fit, Then we'll use 3 custom filters, which will go into the RO unit, but you won't have the membrane. So we put more filtration material for heavy metals and other things at the point of entry. So this would be a maximum system. This is how you remove and reduce and clean your water. It's complicated. That's what I do every day. So when someone says to me, well, they saw a system out there, an Aquasana, for example, it's a little bottle filter. And also, by the way, the control valve on top is a backwashing control valve. You must have a backwashing system. If you can't do it, then what happens, all the toxins get in there, they saturate the filter material and they start spilling over after about a year or two. When you backwash the tank, clean it out periodically, about every 2 weeks at night, it flushes out all the sediment, the debris, and it cleans and refreshes the filter material so it lasts longer. So that's a point of entry. It goes on the main pipe. Every drop of water that comes into your house is filtered. In Florida, we put them outside. A lot of areas in South, we put them outside the house and go in your garage or in a basement. So when I do an intake, we have a form, we have clients fill out on the front page. We get an idea, about the structure of the house, your health concerns. We ask about staining. So there could be hardness staining, iron staining. Those are secondary issues we can deal with. But I have to look up the water report first and look at what's in the water, and then go to the environmental working group, see what else is in the water. Then I can formulate a solution. Then I can present the proposal. So usually we have a 15, 20-minute initial discussion, go over everything, and then I send the proposal. Then we can have another discussion about the equipment. We need a plumber in your area because we deal with customers all over the United States. We have to have a plumber, and I have a lot of plumbers that we deal with. And as long as it can be installed, you have the room for it. The operational costs on these systems, for example, a big tank, it'll give you 100,000 gallons of water a year or more. Total about 400,000 gallons of water. Your operational cost is about $400 a month after the initial cost. So it's a very cost-effective solution. The sink unit's an RO unit that'll last, the filters last about a year, depending if you have a tank. If you don't have a tank, probably 9 months, depending on how toxic your water is. So you may have to change those filters more frequently. You're roughly looking at $300 to $350 a year operational cost. So if you want clean water, there's a cost to it. But if you compare it to 2,000 gallons of bottled water, Mountain Valley, and it's $3 a gallon, it's a lot more expensive. And I know people that were spending $2,000 a month on bottled water. It's crazy. So once you have a system that's effective, we can test it for you. And I have case studies, and you see the cleanliness of the water, that you don't have all these toxic substances. You're going to use this for everything: cooking, rinsing, consumption, anything that touches your food or you consume. That's what you want. That's how you clean your water. So that's the basics of, I covered a lot of material.
Do you want to pull up a sample? You can put my address and put a sample water report so people
Well,
can.
I'll show you, this is our homepage. If you want a consult, you would go down the bottom here, and I'll show you a water report. This is a whole house questionnaire. So you fill that out, it goes into my system. My associate picks it up, and then what we do is she'll schedule a consult with you, and we look at your water. We'll go over everything. As far as the water reports, I'm going to see if I can minimize this.
And these are free of charge, so if anybody wants to
No
just
cost to
put their water.
no obligation. Let's see. I don't even know if I can.
So how does it compare with the taste of spring water? Do I have to, so when I do the filtration system, I get rid of my Mountain Valley water?
That's a good question. Let me
Go ahead, do what you were gonna do.
let me find a Houston report here just to give an example. Where did it go? Okay. Let me go up here. So this is my water quality report. So you can see I have a whole bunch of them here I saved from all over the United States. So I'm going to pick up Houston. This is the Houston report. So this is the Houston, Texas water quality report for 2023. All right, so if you start looking at, this is the general system. So on the left are the detected contaminants. So you see arsenic there. The maximum they allow is 10 ppb. The water system has between 1.6 and 5.2 parts per billion. So there's a significant amount of arsenic in the water in Houston. I always look at the high level because if I have to treat the water, I don't know where the customer's level is. So I look at the high level. That's what we treat. Atrazine is a pesticide. Barium's a heavy metal. It's in every water system. So here you have combined radium and uranium. So you have radioactivity in the water. Cyanide. Now that's a peculiar heavy metal. I see it a lot in Texas, almost everywhere in Texas, a few other places. I think it's from the petrochemical industry. Fluoride. So they at 0.3 to 0.8. 0.8 is the maximum concentration level, the new level. The old level was 4 parts. That's the old EPA level. That's gone. Gross alpha and beta. So that comes from uranium. So you have radium, alpha and beta particles, uranium, and radon. That's in the water. Nitrates from fertilizer, low level here. You go down to licimazine, is a pesticide. You scroll down a little further. Now, chloramine, the maximum concentration level is 4 ppm. And you can see over here, they're going from 2.9 average to 4.8. Why is it so high? Well, they get around the MCL because it's going by the average throughout the year. So they can spike the water in the summer up to 6 parts. I've seen it down in Florida up to 8 parts. I think Delray, Boynton, some areas down there with one of your people on the screen here has, I think they live in that area. And all of a sudden you're taking a shower and it smells like Clorox. It'll knock you out sometimes. So here they're at 4.8, but the average is between is 2.9. So they get around the MCL by taking the average. You have nitrate. Now, haloacetic acids, those are the, and trihalomethanes, those are the chemical byproducts. I can't see the screen because I don't have my glass on, but you have to look at the numbers combined. I think THMs are 87. It's pretty high. You have lead in the water, copper in the water. Then you have other contaminants rating aluminum. Some of these are redundant. pH is neutral to alkaline. Total dissolved solids and minerals mostly. The hardness level varies in Houston. It's mildly hard to moderately hard. So sometimes they need a descaler or a softener. I don't like softeners too much, but when I have to use them, that's to remove the hardness minerals because if they're very high levels of hardness down in Texas, there's some very high levels. If you don't treat it, then you're going to have stalagmites hanging off your shower head. They'll clog everything up, clogs up your fixtures, your dishwasher, and eventually your plumbing. So it's calcium carbonate is the hardness mineral, but excessive amounts, not a health issue, but it's a plumbing aesthetic issue. So this is one of the reports. Now here you have the PFAS chemicals. You have PFBA, PFHXA. That's one of the ones that are typically in the water. They have parts per billion, but it's really 6 ppt. This one, but they're pretty much at the new recommended standard, 4 parts per trillion, a little bit over it. So when you look at this whole report and you go down this laundry list of toxic chemicals, this is really toxic water. It's one of the worst I have to deal with. I have a lot of clients in Houston. This is similar to Mid-Nassau water, Jericho in particular. Those are the 2 worst, very similar. So this is what we have to deal with. You're not going to use a faucet filter or a pour-through pitcher to remove these contaminants. If you do, you'll get some of the chlorine out, but you're going to get the rest of them. You'll be drinking all of them, pretty much. Okay, so that's the kind of water we deal with on a daily basis.
Okay, so my question is, do I get rid of my Mountain Valley water for drinking?
Well, let me just reduce this down. All right. The people that drink Mountain Valley water like the taste. When you use a reverse osmosis, it tastes different because you're taking the minerals out. 80% of the minerals are reduced. I have most of my clients that like Mountain Valley. They keep it a little bit for some drinking and they don't use it for anything else, but they reduce the amount of water they're using Mountain Valley. Some of them just get rid of it. So it's more of a taste issue, not a health issue. Mountain Valley, by the way, if you look at their water report, they have 3 trace contaminants, very low level.
But it's better than Zephyr Hillis, right?
Oh yeah, far better. And you know, they can get it in glass bottles. It's just the cost of it.
I just can't pick it up.
Yeah, well, it's a 5-gallon jug. It's pretty hard. You have to get one of those hand pumps. I used to do it years ago. Now, a lot of people ask me about distillation. Okay, I like it to a point. Brian Clemens at Hippocrates likes distillation. I like it as an endpoint filtration piece of equipment. So if somebody lives in an apartment, for example, they can't attach anything to the faucet. They can't go under the sink. So we have gravity units. They're on my site. So I recommend a gravity unit first. Then you can take that water for drinking and put it through a distiller. That's another option, but not a typical option.
Yeah, we don't like to do that in macrobiotics because it takes all the minerals out.
Right.
Yeah,
right.
that's why we don't do reverse osmosis, Sheri.
Well, here's the choice. I understand you can remineralize the water. The question is, do you want to get your calcium from Houston water? If you look at it, it's not a good source of calcium to begin with. It has minerals in it, but you're going to be getting all the other toxic substances. So you have to make a choice between cleaning the water up thoroughly using the right technology, or if you don't want to use a membrane, then you're still going to have some residual contaminants. That's the choice you have to make. So you can always remineralize the water. That's the point. And I get this question every single time. Same question about the minerals in the water. In hard water, you're reducing 80% of the minerals with the membrane. However, we've come around to a better solution. The filters that I put into our RO units have minerals in them. So we use minerals for positive, negative charges in the filters, and it actually raises the calcium level a little bit. So you get a little higher TDS temporarily. It'll help. So you do get some minerals through the RO membrane. So just, for your information. That's been an issue for a long, long time. However, with the toxic water contaminants, if your water's not that toxic, you don't have radioactivity. If you don't have perchlorate, you don't have arsenic, you can get around it by using a triple unit. Those are our crown units. It's the same filters, but you don't have a membrane. And we have all upgraded filters. So that's another option.
I think okay, so what we're gonna do, I'm recording this. So if you guys, I've muted everybody. If you want to just write, Brian just wrote something and I'll read it. But if anybody has any questions, if you don't mind typing it in. So Brian asked, when I lived in Cleveland, Ohio, my sourdough bread would not work unless I let the water sit out, presumably to let chlorine in the water evaporate. Does this work to lessen any other chemicals? Leaving it out, I guess is the
Well,
question.
if it evaporates over time, some of them may be volatile, but when you reduce the volume of water, because some people say boil the water. Well, boiling the water is an ancient method of killing bacteria. However, you're reducing the volume of the water, so heavy metals are more concentrated. So when you reduce the volume of water, you may evaporate some of the chemicals, but you're concentrating the heavy metals. So it's not a typically good solution to clean your water.
Anybody have any other questions? Is that okay, Brian, for you or okay? Anybody have any other questions you want to type in the chat and I'll read them off to Roy. And for those of you who just came late, Mike and Patricia, we were talking about contaminants in certain areas of the country's water. And Dr. Roy has a form on his website where you can get your water analyzed for free if you type in your address.
We'll look at your water report. If you want the water tested, then you have to get a test kit. Just be clear about that. There's a couple good test kits out there. Just to get onto that, well water. If you have well water, it needs to be tested thoroughly. So you don't get when you look at a municipal report, and I look at them every day, some of them are skinny, some of them are comprehensive. Houston's comprehensive. When I see a real skinny report, meaning they only report a few contaminants, I have the client call the water department who they pay the bill and tell them, I want a comprehensive water quality report for every contaminant you've tested. And they have to give it to you by FOIA. So then they can get it in a PDF and email it to me. So I really want to see everything that's been tested, any contaminants in the water that we have to deal with. So that's really important because there's no sense in filtering water and going through the exercise of spending a lot of money. And it's not a lot of money comparatively for what you're getting, but I want to make sure your water is very clean, that we don't leave anything out we don't miss anything. So that's really important to get a comprehensive test. Now, there are some companies like TapScore. My TapScore is a good company to have test kits, but you have to know what test kit to order. And if it's necessary, if I get a really complete report like Houston, I don't need to test the water because they report everything. Some cases you need to test the water, like small areas, little towns don't test the water thoroughly because they don't have the money. So you just do minimal testing. So sometimes we have to have a test kit ordered to see what's in the water. But typically, we can go by the water report. So if you fill out a form on my website, we'll look up your water report. I'll go over it with you. You can see for yourself, and I'll explain it because it's a little complicated. Like I just explained the Houston water, you have to know what the MCLs are, the levels that are allowed. But the fact is, if you have a detected contaminant, regardless of what level it is, you don't want to be drinking it.
Okay, Holly asks, is there a way to upgrade a current whole house system or would it need to be totally replaced?
No, it's a good question. I'm doing a few of those. I was down at Hippocrates a couple of weeks ago. A client over in Naples has 2 tanks, no backwashing, which is not good. So what I'm doing with her is we're going to replace the filter material and put control valves on top of the tank to backwash them. So we just have to go through the infrastructure, make sure they have an outlet out there. If you have a backwashing system, usually if it's been serviced by a company, I want to get the invoice, see what filter material they put in. I still want to look at the water report. Some people have reverse osmosis units. If you have replaceable filters, I can upgrade them in some cases. So yes, I don't like to throw out good equipment. If you have good equipment, it's just a question of what filters are in there, what filter materials, and if it's the right filter material to get all the contaminants out. So yes, you can upgrade systems that are in place.
Okay, and Irene asks, what do you think is structured water?
All right, now you're getting into the outside the scope of what I wanted to talk about. However, I'll tell you this, my opinion, and I'm a scientist. I have a PhD in biochemistry, a level 5 water specialist, and I see these devices out there. They've been out there for years, alkaline machines, structured water, Kangen water, media water. There's a whole bunch of stuff. The only technology that I've seen post filtration that may be helpful is the fourth state of water, Dr. Pollack. I think he's onto something. When you look at those spheres or devices that claim they're going to get better absorption, I haven't seen any clinical data that says it's going to make your water healthier or cleaner. They don't clean the water. So I'm a little bit skeptical of what they do, and they're expensive in some cases. I know Kangen machines I definitely don't recommend because they split water, they're electrolysis of water. So you're really drinking hydroxyl free radical water. It has a higher pH, but it's not a normal way to alkalize your body. The only true way to alkalize your body, as you well know through macrobiotics, is foods that have alkaline residuals. So when you start trying to alkalize your body using hydroxyl free radicals, it's not a healthy way of doing it. So my answer to specifically the question is, I'm skeptical. I say save your money.
Okay. Brian said, I now live in the Smoky Mountains and have a spring-fed well, so I'm interested in seeing the test results. How does he get his test?
Oh, yeah, well water, the only thing I can't test for is parasites, and wells are good. Some of them are very good, some of them not so good. The question is first, is it a protected well? They have a cap around it, because if it's not protected and you get flooding, you can, there's animal poop all over the ground. It could get into the well. So you can test for bacteria. Coliforms are an indicator group of bacteria. E. coli, you certainly don't want to be drinking water that has E. coli. That's not potable. It's contaminated. And you can get a well-checked test kit. If you're not surrounded or anywhere near commercial operations, if there's no fracking going on within a mile or two, then you can use a regular well-check test kit. Other than that, I would use a water check. If there's been farming on the area, then I would check it because you want to check for pesticides. So yes, you could order a test kit. It's sent to you. It goes to an independent lab, National Testing Labs, and I get a report. It takes about 3 or 4 weeks. And I go over it with you, once you get the results back, and I want to see what equipment you have, if you have any filtration equipment, the pump size, your pressure, how deep the well is. So we go over some technical questions to see if your well is really clean water. It may be.
Okay, there are also, I just wanted to add, I have a friend who lives in Martha's Vineyard in Vineyard Haven, and he gets the spring water right out of the spring. I wonder if that's any good.
Well, Cape Cod is problematic. Like I said, Falmouth, for example, that's where the Air Force Base is. Have a lot of PFAS chemicals in the water there. I'm not sure about the rest of the Cape, but they put restrictions on filtration equipment because they can't backwash the PFAS chemicals back into the water. I have a client up there now, have to replace the filter material. So it's possible. What I would ask the health department, if they'll do it, in some cases they will, see if they'll test the water for PFAS chemicals. I had this problem out on the east end of Long Island in Watermill. I had a client out there for years. He had a well. Well, Suffolk County came in and said, we'll test your water. Well, they did, and they found all these PFAS chemicals that was spread out into the aquifer. So up in Cape Cod, I think it should be tested, especially for PFAS chemicals.
Okay, Holly says, my daughter is allergic to the DFW tap water. She gets a rash when shower drinking the water here, which is why we got a whole house filter and under the sink RO. We have a decent shower filter for her for college, which helps, but isn't 100% effective, and a countertop RO. I'm not sure about the quality of the countertop for her. Do you offer one on your site?
I forgot the name. The countertop was Truist or something. I forgot the name of it, but it's better than some units out there. I don't know which one it is. I prefer to use a double or triple unit because the countertop ROs don't have enough pre-filtration. So they may be leaving some chemicals in the water. The membrane doesn't remove chemicals. So the membrane is more for heavy metals, some radioactivity and special contaminants. So it's really the pre-filtration. There's ways of making it better, using a gravity filter first, then using that water in the RO, or attaching something to the faucet. I'd have to, look at the situation. Shower filters, I mentioned earlier, don't take out trihalmethanes. They're primarily for chlorine and some of the chlorine byproducts. They're better than nothing, but chlorine affects people's skin. It becomes an acid, hypochlorous acid in water, strips oils off the skin. There may be other contaminants in the water that irritate the skin. I know people have had skin issues, health issues with the skin. Once you clean the water up and you really get everything out, usually if the pH is not acidic, the skin conditions tend to resolve for the most part. Not always, but most, it's less irritation. So you'd have to see what the solutions are. Your house system probably is doing a good job, but if you're still getting some issues, I don't know if they are taking everything out, you can test the water after the system, see how effective it is. That's one way of determining if your system is really doing its job.
Okay, great. We only have a couple more minutes. Anybody have any other questions they want to type in the chat? Because we are recording this and you'll get a recording emailed to you at the end. I do have a, Roy gave us all a discount for attending today. So you can type in Macro Magic if you want to order a sink filter or a whole house filter. They'll give you a percentage off. And I do think the prices are really good because I had done a whole system with Denny Waxman a long time ago, One Pure, and they were much more expensive and didn't really clean, look at all these chemicals either. So I think it's a good reasonable choice even under the counter if you live in a condo or an apartment.
Well, yeah, one of the things that's different, I'm not a franchise, I'm not a multi-level. Personally, I don't advise people buying online. And before I even would supply something to someone, I want to look at their water report. I mean, I don't advise people to order anything off my website unless I've discussed with them their contaminants. And I have a water specialist working with me. And we want to see to make sure whatever we supply is doing the job. Because the filter combinations vary. There's so many different combinations. We manufacture some filters. We put filters together at my facility here. So before we recommend anything, we want to see what's in your water. But again, if you go to my front page on the bottom, you can fill out a questionnaire. Either myself or my water specialist will contact you and go over the water report and recommend a filtration equipment solution that's best for your needs.
Deborah Rosamond says, I always thought that Florida had the worst water.
There's a few areas in Florida that are pretty bad, mostly along the East Coast and some other areas. There's heavily chloraminated. They use a lot of chloramine, especially now in the summertime, it's going to go up. So when you see the numbers go up, you're going to be exposed to it. So it's used a lot more heavily here. But there are areas in the United States that have really broken down filtration plants and they get violations all the time. But I'd say overall, it's up there, but not the worst. The worst is, like I said, Texas, parts of New York, Long Island, California has some pretty nasty water, a few other locations. So, it's the point is you don't want to be a 10 on a scale of 10 being the worst. And most of the water I look at, they go from level 6, 5 or 6 up to a 10, and I don't think Florida is the worst water. It's significantly heavily disinfected. There are some toxic areas off of the Sawgrass. I've seen a few problem areas there. Miami has some pretty toxic water, Miami-Dade County. Martin County, where I'm located, you got a little bit of uranium and arsenic. We can deal with that. It's not the worst water. Port St. Lucie has some pretty bad water because what's happening down here, they're overbuilding. There's massive amount of building. They're over pumping the wells. The city of Stewart had to put another well in because they're pumping the heck out of it. And I'd say in 5 to 10 years, the water down here, or the situation with water, will be almost as bad as California.
So what states have the worst?
The worst water, I'd say again, Texas, Long Island. Well, there's a place in Jersey, Tom's River is pretty bad. Jersey has pretty bad water in some locations. It's all over, it depends. If you're downstream, Colorado has somebody calling from Colorado. They have Rocky Flats, Colorado. They found plutonium in the water because they have a bomb grade plutonium plant. So they had to take the water and divert it and get water from Denver because they asked me, can you get plutonium out of the water? I said, no. So what's the solution? I said, move. That's
Okay.
it. So, you can't pinpoint any state, but there are specific areas that I've worked on that have pretty nasty water, but we deal with it.
And Brian said modern building often uses PVC water lines, right?
Yes. All right. The problem with PVC, there's 3 types of pipes. There's copper, traditional. There's PEX. Well, you go way back, they use galvanized pipe. It's copper, PEX, and PVC. Down here in Florida, use a lot of PVC. One of the problems with PVC is that initially, when you run water through it, it's going to leach a couple chemicals. I had it in my house. I tested it. So what we do, even with a tank, the pipes in the house are PVC. So it leaches tetrahydrofuran, and there's one other chemical I forgot. But what we do is when we put a sink filter in, I put a chemical filter first. After 2 or 3 months, we change that first filter and put a new chemical filter in because the chemicals really flush out of the PVC after about a month or 2. So I'm not a big fan of it. If I have a choice, I use copper or PEX.
Okay, it's 6:04, so we're gonna log off, but I wanted to really thank you. I feel like you're such a great resource for all of us, and I think it's really great that anybody can come and get a free report and have you explain it to them, just so they know what they're dealing with. And like I said, we put the website up on the chat. It's CWRENVIRO.com. And then you can get a discount today, or anytime using Macro Magic. But I wanted to really thank you. I think that
Well,
it's
you're very welcome. It's a real pleasure speaking to your group here. I think you're all health conscious, being in the macrobiotic field and, using food as to get healthy. So it's just another aspect of what you need to take care of to stay healthy in a toxic world. And thank you
Yeah.
very much for the opportunity to speak to your group. And it was a pleasure. And hopefully we'll speak to some of your viewers here in the future.
Yeah, and I will send out, well, anything you want to send me, Roy, to send out to everybody, but I'll send out the recording in a couple hours to everybody because I know some of you came on late. Okay.
And I also recommend Branch Basics. That's Marilee Nelson's
Mm,
company. They're a wonderful group of people. I've written articles for them on their website. Marilee started a company, just a quick mention, years ago called the House Doctors. And she found me through Dr. Ray, the American environmental doctor that dealt with chemical sensitivity. And she created healthy homes. I mean, non-toxic homes. Very difficult. But, I've been working with her for years. She recommends everybody to me for water. And she has a very good client base that are very health conscious, a lot of young mothers who are very concerned about their children having a healthy indoor environment. So water is a critical part of that. So you need to focus on a lot of different things. It's challenging, but we're living in a more toxic world and water has to be cleaned up in your home.
yeah, totally agree. And Marilee's come on our conferences before. We just finished one up on cancer, which the recording will be available starting this Monday. If you missed it, you could buy the recording, but it was a really great conference. We had Marilee and I did a cooking class, and then we had Dr. Clapper on, who gave a great PowerPoint, a medical doctor about cancer and some of the reasons or causes for it, and then some of the remedies. So it was really nice. So we hope to have you on at some point, future.
Again, well, thank you so much. It was a
Yeah.
pleasure speaking to you all and be well. I wish you all the
Okay.
best.
Okay. Everybody have a good night. Thanks for attending.
All right.
Bye.